In the frigid winter of 300 for AD, in the Roman city of Emerita Augusta, present-day Merida, Spain, a 13-year-old girl chose to walk toward her own execution, her footsteps echoing through the marble corridors that had witnessed innumerable acts of cruelty throughout history. However, this was no ordinary execution, nor was she an ordinary child. Her name was Eulalia, and what transpired in her final hours would resonate through the ages as a poignant testament to the brutal realities of religious persecution. The Roman Empire, at the zenith of its power, unleashed its full wrath upon this mere child, 13 torches representing each year of her life. Yet, amidst the prevailing darkness of her fate, a remarkable transformation unfolded, one that would shake the foundations of an empire and galvanize countless souls for centuries to come. To contextualize Eulalia's story, it is crucial to understand the unprecedented crisis engulfing the Roman Empire at the dawn of the 4th century. Emperor Diocletian, who had risen from humble beginnings to become one of Rome's most formidable rulers, faced threats from all directions: barbarian invasions, economic turmoil, and internal discord that imperiled the very existence of the empire. In his pursuit of restoring Roman greatness, Diocletian postulated that the root of the empire's problems lay in the abandonment of its traditional deities, the very gods whom he believed had once bestowed strength upon Rome. The burgeoning Christian population, with their steadfast refusal to honor the Roman pantheon or offer sacrifices to the emperor's genius, represented, in his eyes, a malignant force dismantling the empire's spiritual fabric. On February 24, 303 AD, Diocletian unleashed the first of a series of edicts against Christians, igniting what would come to be known as the Great Persecution, an unprecedented and systematic campaign aimed at eradicating Christianity from the Roman world. Churches were destroyed, sacred texts burned, and Christian property confiscated. Government and military officials were faced with a stark ultimatum: sacrifice to the Roman gods or face dire consequences. This decree spread rapidly through the empire, reaching the prosperous city of Emerita Augusta, the capital of the Roman province of Lusitania, where it would soon claim its youngest yet most resolute victim. Emerita Augusta was not merely a backwater provincial town. It was a dazzling beacon of Roman civilization in Hispania. Founded by Emperor Augustus for veteran soldiers, the city boasted magnificent temples, a grand amphitheater capable of seating 15,000 spectators, and extensive aqueducts that supplied water to lavish public baths. Its elite inhabited sprawling villas adorned with exquisite mosaics, while merchants from across the Mediterranean converged upon its bustling markets, offering exotic goods from distant lands. It was within this environment, among the Romanized Hispanic aristocracy, that Christianity began to take root in unexpected ways, quietly spreading among households where masters and slaves alike gathered in secret to share bread and the teachings of Christ. Born around the year 90 AD to a well-off family with clandestine Christian beliefs, Eulalia grew up in a world of privilege marked by profound spiritual conviction. Historical accounts, particularly those by the poet Prudenius writing a century later, and various hagiographical texts, depict a young girl imbued with remarkable intellect and an unwavering faith. Her parents, whose names history has not recorded, navigated the treacherous waters of being crypto-Christians in a society that mandated religious conformity both socially and legally. They not only taught Eulalia to read the works of Virgil and Homer, but also introduced her to the forbidden Christian texts, providing her with a dual education that ultimately shaped her courageous confrontation with Roman authority. From this nurturing yet perilous upbringing, Eulalia emerged as an exceptional and fiercely headstrong individual. Ancient sources portray her as possessing a sharp intelligence coupled with an almost reckless defiance regarding her faith. While other Christian children learned to conceal their beliefs, Eulalia boldly criticized the religious practices of her peers, refusing to take part in festivals honoring Roman gods and openly proclaiming her faith despite warnings of grave consequences. Recognizing the danger posed not only to their daughter but to their entire household, her parents tried to redirect her fervor into private devotion and charitable acts toward the less fortunate. As Diocletian's edict reached Emerita Augusta in the spring of 303 AD, the Christian community reacted with a blend of fear and resignation. Some fled to the countryside, others covertly renounced their faith while holding fast to it in secret, and some braced themselves for martyrdom. The local governor, a man named Dacian, according to tradition, carried out his mandate with bureaucratic efficiency, ordering the demolition of house churches and the arrest of identified Christian leaders. Public sacrifices were mandated, and citizens were required to obtain certificates as proof of their offerings to the gods. For Eulalia's parents, the solution seemed simple: remove their outspoken daughter from the perilous atmosphere of the city until the crisis had passed. Their countryside villa, surrounded by serene olive groves and flourishing vineyards, appeared to be the perfect refuge. It promised the isolation from imperial scrutiny they believed she needed, and a sanctuary for Eulalia to practice her faith in relative safety. However, they had gravely underestimated her unwavering determination. For Eulalia, retreating to comfort while her fellow Christians suffered and died was not a strategy for survival. It was an act of cowardice, a betrayal of her very beliefs. Accounts reveal that, over several days, she entered into deep prayer and fasting, wrestling with a decision that would be unfathomable to many: the conscious choice of a child to seek her own death. On a frigid December night, with her household in slumber, Eulalia slipped away from the villa alongside a single companion. Tradition attributes this role to a girl named Julia, possibly a servant or another young Christian. The two girls journeyed through the dark, navigating miles until they reached Emerita Augusta's forum just as the dawn illuminated the city's structures. What unfolded next would be chronicled by multiple sources, each adding layers to an act of defiance that astonished even the most hardened Roman officials, who had grown accustomed to dealing with zealots. Eulalia did not simply present herself to the authorities. She launched into a public denunciation of Roman religion, her voice resonating throughout the forum and drawing horrified and curious onlookers. Standing before Governor Dacian's tribunal, this diminutive 13-year-old, hardly reaching the shoulders of the soldiers encircled around her, delivered what could only be described as a theological declaration of war. The ancient records capture fragments of her impassioned speech, likely enhanced by later Christian authors. She condemned the Roman gods as demons, denounced their temples as abodes of lies, and branded the emperor himself a servant of Satan. In a particularly audacious attack, she mocked Jupiter, the father of the gods, accusing him of adultery and tyranny, and dismissed the emperor cult as the pinnacle of human arrogance. Initially, the gathered crowd, amused by what appeared to be childish theatrics, soon fell silent, grasping the gravity of her actions. She was unambiguously signing her own death warrant with every defiant word. Dacian's response underlines the intricate psychology behind Roman persecution. Here was a man tasked with preserving order, now faced with a youth whose audacity threatened to undermine imperial authority. Historical accounts suggest he initially attempted to reason with Eulalia, appealing to her youth, her family's social standing, and the pleasures of life she was jeopardizing. He offered her not merely forgiveness, but a pacted chance for marriage into a noble family, wealth, and standing if only she would perform the necessary sacrifice. Some accounts even suggest he tried to downplay the act, urging her to merely touch the incense or utter the sacrificial words insincerely, a compromise that many Christians had accepted to save their lives. But Eulalia's response shattered any hope for an easy resolution. In plain view of the assembled throng, she defiantly knocked over the altar, scattered the incense, and spat upon the emperor's image, acts of sacrilege that, under Roman law, warranted immediate and severe retribution. Still, Dacian hesitated to proceed. Executing a child, particularly one from a prominent family, carried significant political ramifications. More pragmatically, he recognized that martyrs often posed more of a problem than a solution, inspiring similar acts of defiance and resistance. Subsequently, he ordered Eulalia to be imprisoned, likely hoping that a night in chains would erode her resolve or that her parents might intervene with bribes or influence to secure her freedom. The prison where Eulalia spent what became her final night was a typical Roman detention facility, a dark, fetid subterranean chamber where accused criminals awaited trial or execution. Rather than breaking her spirit, however, confinement seemed to fortify her resolve. Christian sources claim she spent the night engaged in prayer and song, her voice resonating through the prison, emboldening other Christian captives while unsettling her guards. By the following morning, news of the young girl's defiance had spread throughout the city, attracting crowds to the forum where her fate would be determined. Dacian found himself at a crossroads: release her and risk being perceived as weak, or execute her and create a martyr whose death could galvanize greater resistance. While the precise sequence of events that transpired next is unclear, the essence of the horror remains constant. In historical accounts, Dacian ordered that Eulalia be subjected to torture until she recanted, employing methods intended to subdue even the staunchest of adult criminals upon the frail body of a child. The tradition of 13 tortures, one for each year of her life, may carry symbolic weight rather than represent a literal count, yet the accounts of her suffering reflect the brutal reality of Roman judicial torture. The aim was not merely to punish, but to craft a public spectacle designed to deter others from similar defiance. What the authorities had not anticipated was that their victim would convert this intended spectacle of terror into something altogether different, a performance of faith that would resonate for centuries, outliving the Roman Empire itself. The first torments inflicted upon Eulalia adhered to the standard procedures of Roman justice, commencing with flogging, a punishment capable of killing even an adult man, let alone a child. The implements varied from leather whips to metal-tipped scourges that ripped flesh from bone. Yet, witnesses reported that Eulalia not only bore the punishment but appeared to welcome each strike, responding not with pleas for mercy but with prayers and hymns. Her unexpected reaction baffled her torturers, who were accustomed to victims who begged, cursed, or quickly capitulated. As the tortures escalated, the dynamics shifted from a display of imperial power to a strange revelation of a different kind of strength, one that transcended physical agony. Iron hooks were cruelly employed to tear at her sides, a torture usually reserved for the most hardened criminals. Burning torches were applied to her wounds, filling the forum with the horrendous smell of charred flesh. Yet, with each new form of torture, Eulalia's defiance only seemed to grow stronger, as did the crowd's discomfort. Some sources claim she taunted her torturers, challenging them to show her the best their gods could inspire, while others describe her maintaining an almost supernatural calm, her lips moving in prayer even as her body faced systematic destruction. The inclusion of boiling oil and molten lead poured over her open wounds represented a break from customary practices. These tortures were typically reserved for slaves guilty of murdering their masters or soldiers accused of treason. The fact that they were applied to a 13-year-old girl suggests either an exceptional cruelty on Dacian's part or more likely a complete collapse of Rome's established order. The audience, initially drawn for entertainment, began to murmur and fidget uncomfortably. Some accounts even record women crying openly, as even hardened soldiers averted their eyes. The execution was turning into a public relations fiasco, morphing the intended victim into a figure resembling a conquering hero. Accounts describe a moment when the torment finally seemed to pause, whether due to exhaustion on the torturer's part or as a last-ditch effort by Dacian to elicit a recantation. In that fleeting lull, Eulalia allegedly offered her final testimony, not a cry for clemency, but a powerful sermon about the impotence of earthly authority against divine truth. She spoke of the resurrection and eternal life that rendered temporary suffering inconsequential, presenting a vision of a kingdom founded not on violence and fear, but on love and sacrifice. Whether these words were indeed spoken or later embellished by Christian authors, they encapsulate the essence of her resistance, a complete inversion of Roman values that prioritized might, honor, and physical dominance above all else. The decision to conclude her torture with fire, burning Eulalia alive, represented both acknowledgement of failure and a desperate attempt to restore control through sheer brutality. A pyre was erected in the forum itself, a public declaration that resistance would be met with the most extreme retribution. Yet, even this final act would be transformed by Christian tradition into something far greater. As the flames consumed her body, witnesses claimed to have seen a dove emerge from her mouth, her soul ascending to heaven in visible form. In an extraordinary twist, snow reportedly fell from a clear sky, blanketing her charred remains in a shroud of white. These miraculous elements, whether historical or legendary, speak to the profound psychological impact of a child's execution and the human desire to seek meaning amid such senseless brutality. In the immediate aftermath of Eulalia's martyrdom, the intended message of fear and compliance failed to materialize. Rather than retreating in dread, Christians emerged from hiding to claim her body, risking their own lives to provide her with a dignified burial. The site of her martyrdom quickly became a focal point of veneration, with believers leaving flowers and prayers despite the prohibitions imposed by authorities. While Dacian's reports to Rome likely claimed the successful elimination of a dangerous agitator, the reality was starkly different. Eulalia's death had inadvertently created precisely what the authorities had sought to suppress, a rallying point for Christian resistance and a symbol that transcended local significance to inspire believers across the vast empire. The transformation of Eulalia from an executed criminal to a revered saint began almost immediately after her death. Within days, Christians were recounting the story of her martyrdom, each retelling imbuing her legacy with new layers of meaning and miraculous elements. As her narrative spread, she became a beacon of hope for countless individuals facing their own struggles against oppressive forces. Forever enshrined in the annals of history as a testament to courage, faith, and the indomitable spirit that defies even the most brutal of regimes. Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to support our work and never miss an upload. Like this video, drop a comment, and share it with others to show your support and help us grow this historical community.